to see you. I read you a lot and glad to be with you on this.
Okay, sir. So Dan.
Yes, good evening. I'm starting the live streaming now. We are live
because
on
I will break out briefly at 7:20, and I'll likely return. You know the reason, so I have to deal with Al Jazeera people too.
Okay. Right. So that means Ambassador Keshi, do you mind if we take Mr. Jime first?
Oh, not at all.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure once again to welcome you to this News.Band television interview on a very timely subject. That is the subject of the moment. Our theme tonight is Niger Republic, threat of war, and ECOWAS geopolitics. The news headline all over the world is there is anxiety because the threat line given to Niger Republic to restore the deposed president expires in a few hours, if it has not expired already. And the ECOWAS leaders are meeting regularly now to decide on the line of action if by the expiry of the deadline, the junta that has just overthrown the civilian leaders failed to restore the deposed president to power. So, Mr. Jime, what is your thinking? What is likely to happen at the expiry of the deadline? Do you have any idea?
Thank you for having me. And good evening, everyone. I can see Adaji, I can see Ambassador Keshi, and Femi, and everybody. And then you, Dan, for making this platform available to discuss what is topical in our region. Yes, you'll be making me an oracle or a prophet if you want me to tell you what will happen. But what I can tell you is that events are evolving at breakneck speed, as they say. As we speak, a rally is going on in Niamey at a stadium with hundreds of people that have been, I think you may say that perhaps the junta, leaders, they were the ones that mobilized them. But it appears that they are in support of the military regime, or that they are against the President Bazoum that has been removed. But there's so much, imponderables and so many, a lot of interest that is, involved, and so many things at play. You call it geopolitics in the ECOWAS region because, as it were, some question will be, there was a military coup in Mali, in Guinea, and then Burkina Faso. How come those ones did not generate this kind of, frenzy, diplomatic frenzy, and so-called international response? It is because of strategic interest. Niger is more or less found itself as a garrison for the superpowers, France and America, that have military bases there. And at the same time, Niger is an ally, that is what it is, of the West, in the prosecution of the so-called global war against terrorism, against ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and then all the armed groups. And then the economic side to it is that Niger is boast of both very prized minerals like gold, and then particularly uranium, which is very useful for nuclear power countries. France uses that to generate power for its about 60 to 70% for its population, while Niger people remain 26 million of them. They are in darkness, as it were. So this is the. I wanted to give that context, that this is what the background is to the whole issue. plus the fact that Niger is also, Bazoum and his predecessors were being paid so much to turn back immigrants from Black Africa. So they were helping them to control the movement of Africans to Europe and so on. So that is what it is. As to the ultimatum, remember it was the AU that first did that. AU didn't say what they were going to do after his own 15 days, but I guess that was what pushed ECOWAS that has been accused of not doing so much in these other countries to only give 7 days. I must say that in a way, apart from this timeline that they gave, I think they have been more measured in their approach than they were in the other, about this other towards these other countries. But there has been the question that military intervention is going to be not only costly, it could be catastrophic, and it could lead to a regional war, in fact, involve the international interests that are there. You heard now that apart from Nigeria pushing for so many, the president, who is also chair of ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government, has written to the Senate, Nigerian Senate, but unfortunately he didn't get the approval. They are saying exhaust political and diplomatic efforts before you go. And ECOWAS itself will appear to be walking back on their original tough talk. They are now saying that they can, that military option will become that of last resort. They have now to exhaust the diplomatic options before they do that, because evading it will amount to an invasion, and then they need the UN support. They need maybe UN Security Council resolution and all that. And given the background, given the environment that they are going in, now Algeria has said they do not support Algeria. These are neighbors of Niger. They don't support a military invasion. Burkina Faso and Mali, they have even drawn their own hand and line on the sand that if anybody attacked Niger, it will amount to declaring war against them too. So I think, in a nutshell, I would say military option was there for what it is, the right noises, and but as part of sounding tough, making sure that this type of thing does not repeat itself. But I don't think that ECOWAS is in a position to follow through with this kind of thing. I think, in my opinion, that all the other measures, the ban, particularly from Nigeria cutting electricity, will come to that, whether supply, whether it was the right thing, legal to do so, and other sanctions, I believe, would help to suffocate Niger enough to bring the military rulers to the table, other than invading Niger. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ejibe. You used to work for ECOWAS. You may also, if it's okay with you, you can reveal in what capacity you did when answering my next question. So now, in this situation, how does ECOWAS work? What are the discussions that may be taking place, meetings that may be taking place, and so on? So what exactly will they be doing at this point in the ECOWAS body? First, if you choose to, you can tell us in what capacity you work with ECOWAS, if you don't mind.
Yes, yeah. I was there as corporate communication specialist. And then I have also worked as a consultant to develop a strategy for the EU and the ECOWAS project. That one involved political affairs and election and all that. So I still work for them at consultancy level. But I was there providing leadership in communication, strategic communication, where in the president's office. That is that. So as to how it works, I mean, usually ECOWAS used to have a standby force, which has not been operationalized. It's not working as it should because of some issues about finance, who pays. Remember when they had ECOMOG and all that, countries like Nigeria were in a position, it was a military regime, to pick up the tabs. Now, many of the countries are they are operating democratic system. They need to go to the parliament to get approval to send any troops anywhere. But in spite of that, they have been able to muster some muscle in having some troops in the Gambia and then Guinea-Bissau. But this has been, involuntary. Countries are contributing. But the problem is that the burden of payment of maintaining those troops has fallen on contributing countries. And so it's a big, and many countries are not in a position to do, to carry that kind of load. For instance, Nigeria, there is insecurity problem in the Sahel and the ECOWAS region. Nigeria is battling, Boko Haram and all that. And then, there's also the hardship, economic hardship. Is it the time to now begin to move troops that are insufficient to tackle internal insecurity, to go and fight a war? Or which country is going to do that? That is the issue. Nigeria normally should be in the lead, because it is the highest contributor to ECOWAS post, which is, by the way, they have what they call community levy. And community levy, that is levy paid on export to third country. When the ECOWAS members export goods, there is something, the duty that is charged. And then it's deducted as source. And because Nigeria is the big product, it exports a lot. And then, so its contribution from the community levy is the highest. So the other countries are not in a position to do the same. And now the other snag here with Niger is that it is as if ECOWAS is being forced to do something. France, and suddenly you see all these countries walking their phones to call the president of Nigeria, whose election victory is still subject of court decision. They didn't do that before now, but suddenly they are calling, asking that Nigeria, since the president also became the chairman of ECOWAS, that Nigeria should do something. So it appears as if there's pressure being mounted on Nigeria. But Nigeria should be careful, should be vigilant to make sure that it does not go into a proxy war that will be disastrous. Nigeria and Niger, they are sharing borders. In fact, there is, if you go to, it's a very long, porous border that they have. Anything happening to the other people, one person here, could affect the other people. So it is, it's difficult to go. So let me leave it at that and leave.
Thank you very much.
Cassie, let me take on another. I'll be back. By the way.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Ejime, for your time. Right. Thank you. Okay, Ambassador Jokeshi, you are a former permanent secretary in Nigerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And so anxieties have been expressed at the role the Nigerian government is trying to play in this Niger crisis. So first of all, let us allow you to introduce yourself to our audience, and then tell us what is the Nigerian government likely to do in this situation. Thank you, sir.
Well, as you rightly pointed out, I retired from the diplomatic service as a permanent secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. After more than 35 years in diplomatic service. And to your second question, must say that Paul has given us a very good background to start a conversation. He has enlightened us on all the various factors and angles that we need to take a look at. What struck me in one of the things he said is that there are so many factors involved. That was, I think, the second or the third statement he made. And that raises a number of questions for me, whether in making that decision and threatening that we're going to ECOWAS would occupy Niger within 7 days, whether Nigeria, first of all, or ECOMOG itself took into consideration all the factors. Because in decision making, you're expected to examine all the factors so that it will enable you make what we call informed decision, a decision that will enable you maneuver if anything happens to the decision you have taken. So if you go back and look at the sequence of events, I find there are a few troubling, if not puzzling things. Number one that we should ask ourselves in this country, and it's worrisome, as a neighbor, did we have an idea that a coup was in the offering? And if we knew, what did we do? That question, along with what Paul said, that we need to take into, we need to have examined all the factors, because it's not just about the coup itself and the fact that ECOWAS leaders met and decided they are going to do this. The whole essence of being a chairman does not automatically confer on you on absolute authority, which makes it imperative that you need to even know what is in your own national interest. And why am I saying this? Number one, there are many issues within ECOWAS that, on our assumption of the leadership, the president could have decided that these are the issues I want to focus on. Even if he decides to take one, there's the issue of integration, which has not been achieved. ECOWAS, we should understand, was established for the economic integration of the sub-region. Unfortunately, almost in the last 16 or more years, the issue of economic integration has been off the radar as a result of insecurity in the region. You have had the Liberian, Sierra Leone civil wars. You have had military coups all over the place. And now you have a whole chunk of trouble in the Sahel. And of course, most of the countries around that area today are under military administration. So the first question, or the second question, in addition to if a coup took place, did we know or we did not know? If we knew, what did we do? So the second question therefore becomes, why on earth did the president leave the issues of integration, the issues of economic development within the region, the issues of poverty within the region, the issues of integration, the issues of security, particularly in the Sahel, and in his acceptance speech declared that we will not tolerate coups anymore? And unfortunately, and ironically, as these things do happen, less than 2 or 3 weeks, he is confronted with a coup and is now obligated to act the script he has created for himself. Now, why is this important? It is important because of a series of things that has happened in the last couple of days. One, you will see what's going on in Nigeria. The Nigerian factor has even been introduced into it. The North is now saying, no more, we are not going to accept any intervention. Because for obvious cultural, religious affinity, this is also our brothers. We will not allow any military action. And about this afternoon, I think a video started circulating. Nigerians in Niger are protesting that there should be no military action. Now, what struck me about that is that as we speak, France, the United States, Germany, and a number of these European countries have pulled out large number of their citizens in Niger. We are about to attack Niger. We have not even pulled out our citizens. Again, the question is, were we aware, or are we aware that our citizens are there before we took some of the decisions that we are giving them 7 days? So when you begin to look at all these factors, you see that this was a blunder that was said to happen, and it has happened, unfortunately, and blown on our faces, of the faces of Nigerians. So where are we? The Senate has said no military intervention. Quite a number, if you turn into any platform or go to social media, you'll see that it's not a popular decision. For most Nigerians, we need to tread very carefully. And one fundamental issue that Paul raised, the issue of who will bear the burden. I was involved because I was in Sierra Leone for about 6.5 or 7 years. So I was very closely involved with not just the Sierra Leonean, crisis, but also with ECOWAS itself. Because from the mission, we provided a number of assistance, and sometimes we were involved in helping to pass communication between Lagos then and our troops and men in Liberia. Halfway down the line, virtually everybody abandoned ECOWAS to Nigeria, and Nigeria bore the burden of ECOWAS. Fine. At that time, we had the capacity to do that. And so we shouldered the burden. Even when the UN approved some of the operations that we undertook in those 2 countries, up to today, they've not reimbursed us because it was our decision to go in, and they just backed us. It's okay. We help one way or the other. Some of those today calling the president, as Paul said, and assuring him that we'll back you, they were among those who sabotaged us in Liberia and Sierra Leone and made it difficult for us to settle the crisis in Liberia and Sierra Leone, which was why we were in Liberia and Sierra Leone for over 10 years at a huge cost to this country. I'm not sure it makes sense now that we are told that we are saving some money from subsidy removal for us now to pour that money into ill-advised just to end a coup. And in any case, nobody has actually said what led to this coup, because this is why you must take care of all factors, not just the Western interest, as Paul has said, even domestic, what was going on or what happened or what's going on in Niger itself that led to this coup. And why in the Sahel region, all you've been witnessing are coups. When you recall what happened in Mali, the military guys in Mali said, we were sent to fight, but we were not provided with the wherewithal to do the fighting, and that our men were being killed by the other side. And they got angry and turned their guns against their leader, back at home at the capital. And this is also the story of some of these things. I've read a script that says that even in the Niger sector, that when they even know where the rebels are and they want to, the president tells them, you need to take permission first from the French troop station on the ground. Now that leads me to another question, to another issue. If you have the French station on the ground, you have the American station with boots on the ground, a coup happens, and they are calling us to take care of it. For goodness sake, why did they not take care of it, and why did they allow it to happen? What were they expected to do on the ground itself? So all they were doing there was their own self-interest, national interest, and not the interest of Niger or not the interest of the sub-region. And for them, immediately it happened, they pulled out their troops. What they did, they pulled out their, non-military personnel, but they didn't pull out the military. And why has the military, the two militaries down that are on the ground, why have they not taken out the rebels? So there are so many questions. And so for me, should we or should not? Most Nigerians think we should not. The parliament has not given its consent. And we should not, because if a coup happens tomorrow somewhere else, which is not impossible, what do we do? The danger of a decision like this is that when you make such pronouncement, and this thing becomes like a domino effect, you are in trouble. If you go to Niger tomorrow, I always say there are reasons in a number of African countries for coups to be, for the military to revolt, because of lack of democracy. Not to talk of us, where we are still disputing the last election, for example. If a coup happens in Togo, will anybody be surprised? The president of Togo has suppressed all opposition and is trying to equal the record of his father that stayed there for over 30 years. Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire had extended the term limits at great cost. Senegal attempted to do that. The people resisted for months and months. But what's going on in Senegal today? The leader of opposition has been locked up. Not to talk of other places. So democracy itself is on the retreat in some of these areas. And these three countries that I mentioned, by the way, when ECOWAS decided that they were going to place a ban and sanction any country that refuses to obey the constitutional limits, it was the presidents of these countries that opposed it. Now, ECOWAS is made up of 15 or 16 leaders. 3 countries said no, and the rest agreed with them. What does that tell you? That they agreed with them because either they didn't, some of them didn't have the courage to come out visibly against it, or they were thinking that, well, if this one succeeds in extending their roots, their tenure, we could also try the same thing. So you begin to see why it is a dangerous move, and why, as many have said, and I support very clearly, that we need to stretch democracy to its final, to its logical conclusion before any attempt is made for military action. Military action in cases like this should not be the first. And the last issue I will raise is, we have had new military regimes in a number of countries in the last couple of years, and nothing was done except sanctions. So why did we not start by imposing sanctions and engaging them as we engage others, and just allow the countries to take care of their own problems?
All right, thank you very much, sir. Naturally, with the level of interest the Western governments have expressed in this Niger Republic issue, one starts to wonder whether there is a conspiracy somewhere. We are looking at some news reports, for instance, and some opinion articles with headlines like Bola Tinubu's credibility will depend on what he can do in the Niger. And if you go to BBC, you will see a lot of reports now on what is happening in the Republic, for one. Another thing is the suspicion, the speed with which President Bola Tinubu jumped into the Niger Republic affray. Some people began to wonder with regards to the Section 135 of the Nigeria's 1999 Constitution, which says if the Federation is at war, in which the territory of Nigeria is physically involved, and the president considers that it is not practicable to hold elections, the National Assembly may by resolution extend the period of 4 years mentioned in subsection 2 of this section from time to time, but no such extension shall exceed a period of 6 months at any one time. So Nigerians are naturally, anxious or, insinuating the speed with which our president jumped into this Niger affray. Is there some secret agenda that we are not aware of? Do you have any comments on that?
To the first question, I'm one of those who I pay no serious attention to all these talks about foreign involvement or foreign intervention and so on. Look, all these are happening because the coup had taken place. Period. Foreign involvement with Niger has been going on for years. And by the way, everybody has emphasized uranium. Niger is not the only country in the world with uranium. So even if Niger decides to close all its uranium fields and stop selling uranium, the rest of the world will still find somewhere to buy uranium, period. Maybe, as it's been reported in a number of papers I've seen, that the French were buying it not at the global market price, but cheaper. Okay, maybe that makes a difference. But nothing solves, the French agreeing at some point to say, okay, we buy it at market price. After all, when OPEC, came together, when OPEC was formed, what was the cost of oil? Gradually, they started raising the price. And today, market forces control the price, or events around the world control the price of oil. So for me, that's not, Now, as to what you read, I'm not too sure that even the president and his team were aware of that level, that aspect of the Constitution. No, the blunder was made, just like the removal of subsidy. It was not well thought out. It was not well thought out or well thought through. So he was made chairman of ECOWAS, and then he just decided that, look, I'm going to, in his speech, maybe the speechwriter just, for whatever reason, just said, there will be no more coups. But it just shows you policies are not made that way. And which was where I started from, that in policy making, you take into consideration. And I tell you why this is for me, this is very ironic. During the election, during the campaigns rather, the Association of Retired Career Nigerian Ambassadors invited the presidential candidates, and they had the option whether they want to discuss foreign policy, or whether they want to debate, or whether they want to sit down with us, and discuss the issue of foreign policy, so that they can at least gain. Because as president, they are going to deal with foreign policy, whether they like it or not. They all turned down the invitation. They didn't accept it. For them, foreign policy was, should I say, irrelevant to them or not necessary? Or they assume foreign policy certainly does not win elections. But apart from the issue of subsidy today and the desire of the labor for palliatives, what issue is giving the president headache in Nigeria today? Foreign policy. Foreign policy is a major challenge the president is facing today. So when we are telling people who want to run for office at that highest level that you need to be prepared for all eventualities, you need to be properly schooled. Those who are advising you to advise you properly on all issues, not just, one sentence, I will build roads, I will build security, I will do, no. You need to be properly prepared so that when you come to office, nothing hits your table unexpectedly because you've been prepared. Yes, perhaps people will not like if I make a comparison, but the truth of the matter is that when you are running for an office in the United States and some other countries, people want to know, your knowledge, the depth of your knowledge when it comes to foreign policy. Because as the president of the United States, you are the leader of the free world. And so there are a number of issues you'll be dealing, not only internally, but externally. And here we are, how many months into the presidency? You are confronted with the issues, and just like you did in the economy, you're likely to flip-flop on this issue again. So there's a need to be careful, there's a need to be prepared, there's a need to take into consideration all the factors when it comes to any decision you have to make at all.
I thank you very much. We know that Mr. Paul Ejime is back with us. So let us bring up this topic within the remaining period of our time to get the comments from both of you, sir. Let me share a report about the rise of military coups in Africa. Since in 2021, there were 6 coup attempts in Africa, and 4 of them successful. There were 2 coups in Burkina Faso in 2022, as well as failed coup attempts in Guinea-Bissau, Gambia, and the island of Sao Tome and Principe. So naturally, people have expressed concern at the rise of military coups in Africa in the past decade. Should we be concerned? And what could be done, especially as Nigeria is a leading country in the continent, to stem the rise of military coups in Africa, and even if whether Nigeria is under threat? Let's listen to Mr. Ejime first. Mr. Paul Ejime, you are welcome back.
Thank you very much, and please, I'm so sorry for the brief transmission. I had to attend to another interview. Yes, there is no doubt that there is a rise in the what you call military incursion in politics in Africa, and particularly West Africa. Remember that West Africa had gotten the notorious title of the coup zone or coup belt of Africa. That was in the 90s and 80s when it was, at times you had 2 governments, one in the bush, the other one in the city, and with military dictatorships all over the place. That we thought we had, in the past 20 years, that we had left that name or had moved towards a multi-party democracy. In fact, until 2020, the 15 member countries of ECOWAS, all of them were operating one form of democratic political system or the other, until the Malian military struck, I think in August of 2020. That is not to say that there were not, attempts, to change government through by force or unconstitutional means. And that was why organizations like ECOWAS, they have protocols. They had one that is actually speaks to this type of change of government. They have zero tolerance, the supplementary protocol on democracy and good governance. is actually addressing that issue. That it says there should be no, unconstitutional change of government. But the problem is that in the name of running a democracy, the system had been either personalized, it has been abused. It's not enough. Holding regular elections, of it's not should not equate to a democracy. A democracy comes with a lot of things. It's a process. It's not an end game. So you have to accompany that with a rule of law, with respect for your constitution, human rights, and then others. And there are other things that democracy should deliver. These are not happening now because of the disposition of many leaders. Now, some of them have come into tenure elongation, the so-called third term. They were changing the constitutions rather in a bizarre, blatant way, and then controlling the legislature and then the judiciary at the same time. Those are not democracy, and that was why some people will say perhaps it was civilian government and not democracy. And because of that disposition, they are not even, the elections are not even run, with credibility or with, integrity. It is, you find ballot, snuffing, buying of votes. And then when now the new trend is that the problem is now in the collation and then management of results. So it is the disposition of these leaders that has now led to this retreat of democracy, because I would say democracy is not the problem. Democracy has not failed. I think it's the operators, politicians that have failed. And so it is they were carrying out political and ballot box coups, and before thereby inviting the military. Because when they carry out this change of government, the people will come on the streets because they have the instruments of power. They will go after them, shoot, kill some of them, and then they can only be forced out by those who are also armed. That is what has happened. It's not that the military rule is the best or is the best option. It is just because in running democracy, this crop of political leaders that we have used it, the so-called democratic holding elections, just for the sake of it. It becomes, just by name, but it's not there, in reality. I think that is what has happened. And until the operated democracy or democratic practice of principles, the way it should be done, we will keep having these intrusions by the military, those who have the power. For instance, the man who has taken power in Niger used to be the head of the presidential guard. So it is a case of now somebody who was supposed to guard you, now you become he's now holding you hostage. Something is wrong with the way our leaders are going about it. And that is the issue. But let us also not discountenance the role of the external forces. I heard Ambassador saying that the externalization issue came only after the coup. I will say no. The role that Niger had been playing had this, the Americans were not there just for the sake of it. And they are not fighting for Bazoum for nothing. Or in fact, they are not even fighting for Bazoum. It is their own interest. The French are also fighting for their own interest. Let us not minimize the role of the uranium, even if that was the only case. They are using America. Remember that America had asked for the Africa Command, and not many countries had volunteered. But in Niger, they have a base where they are using their drone to cover, have intel about so many other countries in the region. This is a strategic interest. So they cannot come out and be talking the way they are talking if it is just about President Bazoum. And the French too, they know what they are getting from their former colonies, including Niger. They pay little money and ask them to be driving back immigrants, Africans that are going through there. And they stay there. They were using that Niger like a garrison, what the French were charged for. It's a staging post. They use it if they want to deploy. If America wants to talk, they talk tough. They're not going to, in a first swoop, bring anything, whether it is military, ship or whatever, or aeroplane. Before they can get to West Africa, it will take time. But when they have this thing stationed at your backyard, it is easy for them to deploy. This is the question. This is the strategic position that Niger has had. And that is what has now thrown a lot of, issues into the basket. And remember that already Russia is also through Wagner, a private military group, whether they deny it or they accept it, these military people are moving towards, now that you saw if you see the banner or the flag, the people are waving Russian flags there. It says a lot. There is so much anti-French, sentiments in former French colonies in Africa. So we have to take all these things into consideration. And perhaps the people want to take back their country. They are tired with the unholy alliance between their leaders, the political class, and the external forces. But Ambassador Keshi will know that these countries, they want leaders that will be compliant. The people who will be, they will use as stooges. Oil, they went to Iraq, not because of democracy, it was for oil. They killed Gaddafi in Libya, not because of any other thing. They want free oil. Now, Libya has become a failed state. I don't think West Africans ECOWAS should not stand by and allow that kind of thing to happen in their backyard or be pushed into fighting a proxy war. Black on black or Africans on Africans, because that is what we come to. These foreign countries are not going to put foot on the ground to fight. They will only make it use those countries that can, apply compliant to do the job. So that is what I'm saying. Yes, there is democracy is taking a back burner because of a number of issues, particularly the disposition or the conduct of the political class. Military rule is not the answer. It's an aberration. But when you make, peaceful change impossible, you are only cutting violent change. That is what has happened. But that is not the best way.
Thank you, Paul.
Yes, thank you,
Paul. Let me quickly say that I did not say we should discard the involvement of external forces. All I said, I think you have actually said it again. But let me be very clear. I've always maintained that part of the whole problem we have in this continent, particularly in this sub-region, has to do with leadership, pure and simple. And if we continue to have leaders who are not living up to expectations, we will continue to have coups. Whether you have the external intervention or you don't have external intervention, whether there are stooges or there are not stooges, it is still part of the failure of leadership. And that's the position I love to maintain, and I will argue very, very seriously. It is everything you see happening in all these countries, how you can actually begin to take the countries one by one. And you see that the leaders contributed more to the issue than, and at the end of the day, stimulated or instigated military uprising. Okay? The second issue, of course, so the question that was asked is that we all in the sub-region need to be very careful. That's answering the second or the first question. In the 60s, when the first coup in the continent and in this region happened in Togo, then I think Dahomey or somewhere like that, then now Benin followed, and before you knew it, almost with the exception of one or two countries, they not experienced military coup. What happened really was it became fashionable. It became fashionable for the military leaders to just imagine that, oh, our neighbors in here have taken over power. Why shouldn't we also take over power? And that's why we need to be very careful. That it could also become fashionable if leaders in the continent or in this sub-region do not change their ways. If they do not allow democracy to survive, if they continue to rig elections and create dissatisfaction, and if ECOWAS begins to do what it does, look, in Ghana, elections were being disputed. The president of Ghana was made chairman of ECOWAS. For goodness sake, why would you do a thing like that? In Nigeria, elections are being disputed. The same ECOWAS president of today, or whatever you call the man running the secretariat, they also arranged to have in Nigeria a president that his election is being disputed in court to become president of ECOWAS itself. Even if it was our turn, shouldn't they have postponed it to say, look, it can go somewhere else until after the cases have been resolved? And this is why, if you look at the number of write-up, unfortunately, it's been said that, oh, could also this be, I mean, Tinubu's desire to go to war is a plot because, and we heard what the Constitution says and so on. No, I do not think so. I just think that we need to be very careful, because if we are not careful, if there is a coup anywhere today again, I can tell you that we are just going to see coups returning back to the region. If our leaders are not careful, if they refuse to allow democracy to run properly, and that starts with conducting a free, fair, and credible election, which, by the way, ECOWAS supervises, and ECOWAS is reluctant to tell the full truth. It issues reports. When you compare the report of the international observers that observed Nigerian election, ECOWAS produced the weakest report, which was why, of course, APC and its lawyers, we're so happy to present only ECOWAS report in court, but did not read the full text of the report itself, that somewhere inside the text, there was some criticism against the election, and it came out during the during the court hearings. So many things that we need to put into consideration. At the end of it all, look, in Mali, I said it before, what was the reason the soldiers gave? They were sent to fight, but no provision was made to provide the wherewithal for them to fight, and their men were dying. True of us, that's their grievance. So we need to improve the quality and the character of leadership in this sub-region. After all, democracy is surviving in Eastern Africa. It is doing very well in Southern Africa. I don't know, those who have tried to extend I'm not too sure who have tried to extend their tenure, but once election comes, they go through election, they obey the constitutional requirements, and then everybody moves on. But on the West Coast, it's been different. It's been different. And I'm reluctant. I've said this in so many forums and challenge. I'm reluctant to continuously blame external forces for our crisis in this part of the world. And as I always say, since the 1960s to 2023, we were, given the period we gained independence, some other countries in the Asian world gained independence like us. Where are they today in comparison to where we are? And I think that should also worry us. And why are we where we are and they are where they are? The difference. Leadership made the difference. Leadership made the difference. And so my position is that, yes, the external factor is strong, but we can't continue to blame every time we want to talk about the region. We talk of external factors as These other countries, did they not have external factors when they decided that they were going to take their country to their hands and develop? Did they not have external factors when they voted for democracy and ensured that it survived? Did they not have external factors when they focused on agriculture, focused on industry, focused on human capital development that made them what they are today?
Let me call you later.
Where are our leaders? So that's what should bother us. That is exactly what should be our concern. And I'll make this prediction. If we continue the way we are going and democracy begins to retreat, there'll be more coups in the region. And that is the honest truth. Whether they like it or not, or they do not like it, that is the best prognosis anybody can make, that except our leaders change their ways. You don't go to election and say you are going to grab it and run with it, and irrespective of what happens, you are going to be there. There are so much discontent in the region when you remove the economic factors. Politically, people are also not happy with a lot of things going on, not just in this country, but everywhere. So our leaders, we need to plead with them to be very careful. Future leaders, we also need to plead with them. Look at the rest of the world where they are today. Africa shouldn't just be the only one that is having all these problems. You need to look at the recent reports of Saudi Arabia, UAR, and Qatar. In a couple of years' time, I mean, look at the amount of money Saudi Arabia alone is even spending because it wants to build us sports and host the next World Cup. Why do you think they are doing that? It all boils down to the failure of leadership. And except we get it right. And we, the people too, we should be honest to admit that we are part of the problem to some extent. For some people, it doesn't matter who wins as long as my man is there. It doesn't make a difference whether the guy has the capacity or not. So we really need to be very careful that at the end of the day, our fundamental problem is leadership. And until we address it one way or the other, we're going to continue to have problems.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ambassador Joe Keshi and Mr. Paul Ejime. It's been a very engaging conversation. We'll now take a few comments or questions from the audience. And then we also note that Dr. Kayode Ajulo is here. He raised his hand up some moments ago. We also note the attendance of Mr. Osele Kobaze, who has written an interesting, a brilliant article on this subject we are discussing. And the headline of his article is "Avoiding the Niger Quagmire" by Mr. Osele Kobaze. He's in the audience, and if he would like to make some comments on the topic we're having tonight, please, sir, you are very much welcome.
There are 4 hands I can see up. I think you can,
Yes. So in the meantime, let's take the hand of Mr. Femi Aka Alaro. Femi Aka Alaro, you can unmute yourself. Let's hear from you, sir. Femi Aka Alaro.
Hi, AK Alaro of Nigeria. Femi Lawal here. Thanks a lot for giving me the chance. I'm a true obedient and a member of COPDM. And it's an honor to be amongst you great minds. And I appreciate every input you've all brought today based on this topic. And for me personally, the Nigerian state itself, as of now, is in a civilian coup. Because automatically when we talk about coup, we automatically think military coup. Ourselves, we're in a civilian coup because we're talking about a man that's been selected to be at the ends of power in Nigeria that has not won, that has stolen the people's mandate itself. So the people's will is not being represented in Nigeria. And now you talk about ECOWAS itself, like my older brother said earlier, they were part of the people that monitored the election. They can't find it in themselves to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. They were partial. Now they selected this man to be president. When he was there, after selecting him, they couldn't wait for the tribunal to make his ruling. They now made him the chairman. So we have to see a failing process in the system itself. What is the implementation? What moral authority does the present selected president of Nigeria has to judge any failed state in Africa, not to talk of the rest of the world? He himself, by so doing, has selected ministers. He also selected ministers through transactional process, not for the interest of Nigeria. So the same process keeps repeating itself. Do we expect at any time for him to make any other decision besides being transactional? His interest in going to war or to anything is nothing but the transaction. He does not have the interest of Africa in mind or the interest of the Nigerian state. And we have to call spade a spade. I thank you for the opportunity. And by God's grace, the only hope for Nigeria and the only hope for Africa is the mandate of Peter Obi. Imagine if he was in the situation we are today, what will be the difference in the process of decision making? We should choose competent leaders, like one of my older brothers said earlier. Also, the problem of Nigeria and Africa is leadership. Why should the least amongst us rule over us? Thank you very much. Have a blessed day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joseph Ayalogu. You can unmute yourself. Quickly, let's keep it to 2 minutes and then allow our guests to make their concluding comments. Two minutes.
I was going to suggest that you limit the speakers to even 1 minute so that I see a lot of hands so that at least
yeah. Okay, let's keep it 1 minute if possible so that we have their concluding comments and we go back to we come to the end of the program. Joseph Ayalogu, please. You can unmute yourself. I have asked you to, you can unmute yourself. Yes.
Right. I've had all the discussions. I am Ambassador Ayalog, for retired Foreign Service officer. As Ambassador Keshi has said, and of course the last major speaker, the problems are with us, leadership and so on. The solution must be also from us. ECOWAS has to review itself, review its operations. I know that the President Tinubu must have wanted to act on one of the clauses about sustaining democracy. But you know that sustaining democracy involves a lot of things. It involves election, it didn't act on that, and so on. Involves, if for instance, he had worked on the economic issues or transport issues, this may have even encouraged the coups in Niger that, oh, there's a new man there and he's talking sense, because the other socioeconomic things that could have been done by ECOWAS would have actually helped in bringing a quality life to people. And I think that these coups are just looking for quality life. So that was a miss. My fear now, or my expectation, is that our president will take the cue and forget about the war drums and correct himself. There has been a goof, correct himself, and let us see whether we would be able to talk with the new government in Niger and at least pick up our image again. And one thing before I close, let it not be made to look like a Nigeria-Niger problem. It shouldn't be. We don't have a problem with Niger, and we shouldn't. It's not part of our foreign policy objectives. Our foreign policy objectives, like everybody knows, is a concentric form. Our closest neighbors are our main response. I mean, it is key that we maintain peace with our neighbors around us. That is the first ring in the concentric structure. So, well, I don't want to speak further than this. My time is short.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. I can see that these are not questions but comments. So can we take concluding comments from Ambassador Jokechi so that he can be free to for his other engagements of today, and also Mr. Paul Ejime if he so desires. Ambassador Jokechi, please, what are your concluding comments with regards to the team we are having today?
First is to observe that my brother and friend, we had spoken about an hour before this, is dressed in military outfits. You know, I don't really where Joe is going to lead an army to Niger himself.
Yeah,
you know, I'm saying thank you very much. But look, the truth that we must face is that we need to pull back a little bit and think the whole thing through. Yes, democracy, negotiations, particularly the diplomacy might take a long time, but at the end of the day, it is also, the best way, given the circumstances which we find ourselves now. Look, it's not only the National Assembly that has said no. A number of northern groups have also raised some serious issues that we cannot discount at this point in time. So we really need to draw back a little and begin to review all these issues. The next point I would say is that we must find a way to reach the leadership in Niger, because what they did the last time was very, very disrespectful, to our leaders. If what I heard is true, they did not, the leaders, the delegation did not meet the leader of the coup itself, or did not meet the new president or the junta leader or something like that. I think that was disrespectful. They should have actually honored it to listen, but the fact that the first mission failed do not mean that the second or the third mission would fail. So we begin to explore, the things we need to do. If we are serious and we want sanctions to work, we also need to engage Cameroon, because Cameroon also shares border with Niger. And as of today, I'm not sure that we have heard anything from Cameroon, and Cameroon is not a member of ECOWAS. So we could also employ Cameroon, because they are also neighbors, ask Cameroon to also get involved in talking to the coup leaders in Niger. Anything we can do, we can throw into the mix to get them to be reasonable. Like we did in other places. Can we say, okay, Mali and Burkina Faso and so on, yes, we gave them time. Can we just tell these people, can you guys take some time, cool off, think about the whole thing, and in a couple of 6 months, organize an election, but allow the other president to run as well. If he wins, fair enough. But we must see this as part of an internal breakdown in relationship between the president and his security guards. And we must find a way to talk to both sides. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ambassador Jokechi. I know you have indicated you have another engagement for the evening. So we thank you very much for attending this very, very important Zoom meeting. Mr. Ejime, if you allow us to take 2 comments before you make your concluding comments as well, and then we proceed with other comments before we call it a day. Yes,
no,
okay.
Please let some, I think I will, it's not just, let two at least let them say, it's not a 1 man or 2 person show, yeah.
All right, so Dr. Nongo Moses, it's your turn. You can unmute yourself, and then we take Dr. Kayode Ajulo. Dr. Anongo Moses, you can unmute yourself.
Yes, I've done that. Thank you very much, News.Band. I most appreciate the two speakers, especially Ambassador is suing for peace. But I look at it in this direction that it is not just about leadership that is a problem with the Black people, but I'm seeing that there is a serious problem, which I argued 1 month ago when a group of scholars were discussing about neocolonialism and decolonization of the Black people. I said that, no, it's not about decolonization, but the problem I have discovered with the Black man, especially African leaders, is the problem of colonialism. Colonialism in the sense that our leaders, after passing through series of Western colonization and realizing that, okay, we have a problem with the colonialist ideas, they have come back to sell themselves as slaves to the West. They have colonized themselves. This time, it's not the West that is colonizing us, but we have colonized ourselves. We have demoted ourselves. We have demarcated ourselves and have sold ourselves to the West, telling them that, oh, we don't have our brains to think. Otherwise, why should African leaders decide that they will steal resources in their country, they will steal money in their country, they will enslave their citizens, they will make their citizens very poor to the point that people find it easy or difficult to eat. And they are taking these resources to the West. How on earth a human being think like this? This brought me back to what Levi Bruce said, that the Black people don't have the brain to think. But I am sorry to say this here. A lot of Black people can think very well. Now look at the way Paul is reasoning. Look at the way Ambassador is reasoning. Look at the way the military man is reasoning. We can think. So the problem now is not about leadership. The problem is that we have lost, both from the political aspect and from the military aspect. Take the case of Nigeria, for example. Look at the military system in this country. Look at the high level of politicization of our military in this country. Now assume that the military has taken power in Nigeria. Do you think any reasonable thing will take place? Any development will take place in Nigeria? Now push that aside. Look at the extent to which ethnicity has eaten into our brain.
Dr. Moses, if you allow you can go on. Can you please round up?
I think by now, just to round up, this thing you have seen that is taking place in Niger is a calculated attempt to destroy ECOWAS. And as I tell you, if the issue in Niger is not properly handled, the organization ECOWAS will die a natural death without a shot of gun. Just take this word. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Kaida Ajulo, are you still there? Dr. Kaida Ajulo. Or we take, there's another Joe, I'm seeing hand here. I think that Ajulo's hand is now down. Joe, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to unmute. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Thank you very much for doing the right thing. First of all, you tried to make a mistake and that person you were calling corrected you. We have to learn to do the right thing. You see hands up and you left all these hands and you are calling Dr. somebody. That was why the man left. So when we learn to do things right, we have to start it from ourselves. When you see hands raised up, follow the hands accordingly. That's what I want to do. That's by the way. Now, I just want to make a comment concerning what you said about a certain section of the Constitution, Section 135. What I want to say briefly is this. A constitution that is what it's sought cannot be talking about a presidency that is fighting its legitimacy in court. That's my understanding about that section of the Constitution. It's not for a presidency that is fighting its legitimacy in the court. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chidemwano.
Good evening. Just wanted to kind of maybe put another spin on this. I gather most people here are opposed to the intervention, and someone made a comment that if Peter Obi had been the president, we'd be following a different track, and I'm going to disagree with that. In that the Niger intervention is going to have to happen whether Tinubu is president, Buhari is president, Jonathan or Obi. There are certain key geopolitical things that we cannot override, irrespective of whoever is the president. So I'll just be very quick and say the first thing is obviously we share a very long border with them. Our cooperation with Niger in Diffa region, which is bordering Borno State, has been key to limiting the activities of Boko Haram around the Lake Chad Basin. Now, if the Nigerian regime falls and there's a new president there and he's doing whatever he wants to do, he doesn't honor his old agreements, now he's canceling agreements, but now that gives us uncertainty. It means that we now need to start reinforcing that on our northern border with troops that we don't have. As we all know, Nigeria is overstretched already. That's the first point. The second point is contagion. And this is, it speaks to both the presidents, but also to us as the people. Every president is looking at what happened in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Guinea. Now, these are, forgive me for saying, these are relatively insignificant countries. Their significance at this point is because they're troublesome places. They are the weakest economies in Africa. They've got the smallest militaries. They don't, they're not these big powerhouses. But now you have a coup next door to Nigeria, the biggest country in West Africa, the most powerful country in West Africa. Tell me what will happen if that happens now in Benin, in Togo, and then in Cameroon. It leaves Nigeria. And we know our people, we know our military. The fear is that somebody somewhere will then now think, if it will work there, it will work here. We have that fear of contagion. So yes, it is in Nigeria's interest to intervene in Niger for those reasons. But the second point is that, the third point is that whether we intervene or we don't intervene, somebody is going to intervene. You've already heard talk about Russia. Now, let me be clear from my point of view. Russia is not a factor in this. Russia, is just by the side. Russia is not going to intervene in Niger until they know that road is clear for them. But if they do intervene, the French and the Americans will come to counter them. And what you see happening in Sudan, you see happening in Ukraine, you see happening in Libya, is now going to be happening again on our northern border, bordering the two worst parts of Nigeria, in terms of conflict, the northwest and the northeast. We already have weapons flowing freely from Niger, from Libya, through Mali, through Niger, down into Nigeria. Now, what happens now if the Nigerian army is now fighting itself, fighting either the Russians or the Americans or the French, and it's all a free-for-all, there's weapons flying everywhere. So my point is that we might not like who is the current person in Aso Rock. We might all agree that he's not entitled to be there and he's the absolute worst person on the planet to be there. We can also all agree that he's not handling this well. As has been mentioned, he came out, with some kind of statements that don't seem to have been thought through. But the reality is that the Nigerian coup is a problem for Nigeria, whoever is the president. A different president might have handled it better, might have handled it differently. But whatever we do, however we go, this is not about France, it's not about America, it's about Nigeria. We have our own interests in Nigeria that we need to protect. I've not even talked about the tribal elements of it. So I think in as much as we might all turn around and instinctively not want to support this because of the person who is, championing it, and because of the fear that if he does this properly, it will give him credibility. And when, the inevitable tribunal result comes out, he will now use this one to start oppressing everybody. We can put that to one side. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can understand that Niger is our strategic, the Nigerian outcome is in our strategic interest.
Okay, can we please move on, give to another person a chance so that we can go, please?
Please, exactly.
The point has been made. So let's take one or two Dan,
I think Mr. Jello is back or something like that, if I'm not mistaken.
Ajula.
Ajulo, are you there? If not,
I don't think.
Is it?
I cannot see.
Okay, there's Daniel Don Wibo, and there's Robert Amil, and then there's another Daniel, and then Dennis Ray Ogosi or something. So
Okay.
maybe you.
Good evening, everyone. This is Dr. Don Wibo. I think I must appreciate the two ambassadors who have spoken, and Paul and all of us. For me, I think that, sincerely speaking, war shouldn't be the first option. That is the first thing. But I'm more in the medicals, and I would say that what is going on in Niger and indeed across Africa is more of failed leadership. I think that the key problem we're having on ground is that we have leaders who have failed to implement democratic principles. And the last election in Nigeria is a very good example. So to make it sure that others can contribute, I think that if African leaders would understand that military intervention is no longer an option, democracy is the way to go. But if we must do that, we must be ready to listen to the heartbeat of the people. The issues that pervaded Africa in the 80s, in the 70s, are still the issues that are pervading Africa today. And that is the main cause of all these military upheavals here and there. And this we must understand if we have to make progress. So as far as I'm concerned, African leaders, if they fear military or they don't want military intervention, we must listen to the heartbeat of the people. And the ECOWAS leaders, I must for one say that they have not acted rightly. Here we have, I don't know how many presidents they have in their committee. And the only person that can make a leader at a time like this is a man whose election is still highly being contested. A man whose legitimacy is still highly in question up till this moment. There's no election since Nigeria began democracy. Indeed, since 1960, has been this contested like the one we have currently. And they wake up early one morning and they decide that that's the right person to make their leader. That is where we are, and that is why we are where we are. So our leaders must think right. But in my opinion, war, boot on ground, no matter what interest we have in Niger, is not the first option, because the aftermath effect will be monumental. And I don't think we have enough resources at the moment. Those people who are saying Tinubu has to prove himself by going to war in Niger, when it begins to happen, all of them will run away. And Nigerians and Nigerians will suffer it. We don't have what it takes at this moment to go to war in Niger. We must not allow that to happen. Negotiation remains the best form of resolution of this problem. And I think that is the way to go. God bless you.
Okay, there's a Daniel. Before this Daniel comes to judgment, Dan, I have to. So Daniel, if you are there, unmute and say, I just wanted us to, not to make it an issue of the guest. Nigerians have a lot to say. Let's express ourselves. Daniel, if you can unmute and say something. Otherwise, we go to Dennis, Ray, Ogosi, and maybe end. Okay, yeah, Daniel.
Thank you, ambassadors, for this evening, and thank you, Mr. Daniel Lumba, as well. I think I have got two things. My first, ask a question to Ambassador Keshi. What does Ambassador Keshi have to say about the treaty between Niger and Nigeria concerning the Kanji Dam that Nigerian government has violated by turning off the electricity to Niger? Okay, so he talked about the disrespect that the military junta gave to the representatives from the Nigerian government, or he failed to address that Nigeria violated treaty by turning off their electricity. Because if Niger goes ahead to build a dam on their own side of the Niger River, Kanji Dam will be inoperable. And that treaty has been in place since the late 60s, and Nigeria violated that treaty by turning off the electricity. That's number one. Number two, just listening to Mr. Chidi Wonu, I think those of us from the Anglophone countries, we are very wicked. We are very wicked and selfish because we fail to understand the pain that the Francophone nations have gone through, that they are really not independent. Not like us who have even enjoyed a little bit of independence. The Francophone countries are under subjugation of France. They've never been liberated. Okay, and ECOWAS, what has ECOWAS done to help them? Not a single thing. 80% of their reserves still continue to be put in France, and they have to borrow it at interest from the French government. How wicked can we be? That will be saying that, oh, let's go, there's a reason why we should go to war. What nonsense. Do we delight in keeping our brothers as slaves?
Okay, please, let's mind the language. I think that point we will address. Albert,
Paul, please let's just treat some of these issues very quickly. Right. Number one, gentlemen, if you had listened to me, yes, I did not mention the dam itself, but it's part of what I spoke about when I talked of the mistake and the consequences of the mistake that has been made, and why I did say that the issues that there's a need when you are making policy for you to, because Paul in the second sentence that Paul made, Paul talked of the fact that there are so many factors involved, and I articulated that by saying that we need all these factors should have been put in place, considered, and the failure to consider these factors is also responsible for what we are going through now. So it's not as if we ignored it. We did not. In fact, I think if you look at, I don't know, Paul, if it's possible, I think you may wish to put it on the platform, because in one of the things you released, the pains that the Niger people are going through, I think the issue of the Niger and the obligations that France, and the treaty they signed with France at independence. And secondly, to the gentleman who talked about our wickedness, no, my dear, it is not our wickedness. Okay, it is the failure of those. Listen, the agreement was not signed by some strange fellows. It was the leaders themselves, for their own interest, that signed those agreements. And for many years, I have some colleagues who are involved in this that have served in some French territories. These guys would prefer to deal more with the French than to deal with the rest of us. So it's not our wickedness. Nobody, you have to, first of all, be in the driving seat to liberate yourself, and others will come and support you. But when you begin to think that, no, everything you do must be like the French, you love the French, you love the language, you love their dressing, and like we do here, our first port of call if we want to leave this country is England, theirs is Paris. You don't turn around and describe others as wickedness. It just shows that you do not have the full knowledge of what transpires in the French territories and in the Anglophone countries. Many times, look, how many of these, you are talking of our wickedness. How many of these French countries were involved in Liberia and Sierra Leone? They virtually backed out. You are talking of our wickedness. The night Nigeria was to reclaim Freetown, we gave the French, the Guinean Air Force that, look, they should use the air while we use ground forces. They failed us and led to a number of deaths. Why? No, let's be charitable when we make these accusations about wickedness. It's not a question of wickedness. Instead, let's blame them and their leaders for the failure to rebuke the agreement they signed. How can you, for goodness sake, Paul, I beg of you, put that agreement in case many people have not seen it. How can you are becoming the leader of an independent country, and you sat down and signed all those things off? And a young man comes out some 60 years later and says that we are wicked. Come on, that's unfair to everybody on the Anglophone.
Ambassador Keshi, let me also, if he's still there, if he can take the pains to just note an article on Côte d'Ivoire, the bitterness of flag independence. This was what article written in 2010, but it has a lot about the relationship between France and its former colonies. So it is not about anybody being wicked. It is what these people have chosen. They are now, some of the citizens are now seeing that they are in bondage what they have is flag independence. And it's not the making of the Anglophone. And it's not that even that Anglophones are doing well, they are, to some extent, they can assert themselves, but not the French. And they have a reason for that. If you read the French history about policy of assimilation, that is making people of that are not French, French people. These people were voting in French in France. They were deputies. Some of the leaders that they used to have. So they made them believe that, assimilated them before they now came with the policy of association. But they have never left them. It has never really left them. Where today, if Africans, former colonies, stop speaking French language will be dead. I can tell you that. That's why they are making everything possible to come and make sure that but I agree, it's a leadership that has to do with it. But I also know that they are putting too much pressure on them, which must be resisted. Okay? That is where leadership also comes in. You must be willing to die. Some African leaders have been assassinated. Why did they do that? That is because they were not kowtowing to the interests of foreign powers. Lumumba and Nkrumah was toppled. Sankara was killed. Gaddafi was killed. These are the things. If you are leading in Africa, you must be ready to sacrifice. Okay, that is by the way. Dan, I hope maybe in conclusion, there was some, let me take, scroll one comment here. Somebody was saying that Bazoum was taken out because he was probably aligning to Nigeria, was going to use Naira and all that. No, the problem was that there is an internal crisis. He was carrying out what he called reforms in the military. He has fallen out with the man who anointed him, that is former President Muhammadu Isufu, who also, the man who has taken over today also used to be Isufu's head of presidential guard. But for some reason, this man wanted to assert himself. He thought he was, and then wanted to carry out military reforms. The man, Chiani, was penciled to be removed on the 27th. The coup happened on the 26th. So this man just came. But my question had been, if you had about 3,000 American and French troops there, why didn't they get the intelligence that such a thing was happening? Some of them were training the Niger army. Why did it, or are they in support of removing the Bazoum because it was no longer serving their interests? These are some unanswered questions. But the bottom line is that in West Africa, former French colonies, they are now the citizens. It's not that they like military rule, because forget all this, what do they call it, honeymoon. It will be over. We give them 1 month or 2 months. But the fact is that they are looking for alternatives. That is the issue. When you push the goats to the wall, it will kick. These people are now seeing that their leaders have failed them. They are looking for an alternative. And that is what is happening. The same thing is also happening or will happen in Anglophone or Lusophone. The thing deliver, good governance is the antidote. If you don't govern according to the democratic rules or whatever you call it, give the people, deliver the basics of life, food on the table, access to health, access to water, access to education. These are the basics. If you only cater to yourself and your family, it will bounce back. The people will go on the streets. From there, you can use all the machines you have, but then there are people who have the guns. That is why the military are always coming as if they are Messiah. They are not, but it is because that is the only language that the African politicians understand when they want to be removed from office. Okay? Because they will come heavily against the civilians. So in a nutshell, I am saying, let's go back to the topic. There is geopolitics there, whether we, But that is the issue. And because I understand Ambassador Keshi's insistence that it is our own, it is the rat at home that invites the one in the bush to tell them that there is meat somewhere in the house. It is our leaders, incompetence, selfishness, corruption, nepotism, and the fact that they're also wicked. Because I can't see how one man will want to amass all the wealth in the country, and then to allow millions to suffer. That is what is happening. And unless and until they change their ways, we will continue to have some military adventurers, because these ones are opportunists. They are adventurers. They want to try their luck. And somebody talked about contagion. That is what is happening. That if they can succeed in Mali, in Guinea, in Burkina Faso, why not? So this is a bandwagon effect that is now playing out. It can be stopped. For Niger in particular, I think ECOWAS was too fast in moving. Usually what they do is that they come with some sanctions. If those sanctions are not met, before you now come with ultimatum. But in their hurry, maybe I talk about pressure from France, from America. You remember that the UN Secretary General, American Secretary of State, everybody, even the Vice President, they were all calling the head of ECOWAS to say we support you suddenly. And that is why you must know that it's just beyond, it is to protect their own interests. You don't blame them. Any country is allowed to, if you protect your own country's interests, not just your own. But if you don't, somebody will, your country will become, stepping stone, or what do you call it, a mat of the door. So that is what I wanted to add, and to thank everybody. I didn't think that this thing will go this way, but we agreed. I am on one page with Ambassador Keshi that with his Africans that allow African leadership that are allowing external forces, but if we cannot minimize that, because they put a lot of pressure on our people that only very few can withstand. Many of them gave in, and that is the problem. And so that is my point.
All right. I thank you very much.
Back to you, Daniel.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Keshi and Mr. Paul.
Daniel,
I'm going to. Okay, sir.
No,
yes.
Let me just make one prediction. It's just that ECOWAS has gotten himself in this unfortunate situation. We should not rule out the possibility of a counter coup, and another leader could emerge any given time. Exactly. Thank you.
All right, that is a very, very dire prediction. We like to take the comments of the last hands while our guests are free to stay or to leave at this point, but we are still streaming this thing live. So let's take one minute comment from all the hands that we still see raised up. Robert Amer, can you keep it to 1 minute? Then Dennis, in that order, Dennis, Wilson, Comrade David, and finally Mazi HTM Okoye. Robert Amer, please, can you keep it under 1 minute? You can unmute yourself so that we make sure we take all the hands that we see raised up. You can unmute yourself, sir, quickly, 1 minute. Otherwise, Dennis Ogosi.
Yes, good evening, everybody. I'm Dennis Ogosi, PSN Coordinator of Republic of Ireland, member, Board of Trustees, COPDEM. Thank you, Ambassador, and the honorable gentleman there for having us, and we've listened keenly to you. Really appreciate all you're saying right now. Okay, before I ask my question, I'm going to give a preamble because everybody seems to be centered on leadership in Africa, which they are intertwined. Well, leadership is just the secondary aspect of it. I think the primary aspect of this is what we call the system. And by the system, we have to go to the root of the issue. And what's the root cause of Africa being the way it is? Before going there, you have to go way back in 1884, the Berlin Conference, where nations came together to divide Africa. They divided Africa up, and put the system in place. And amongst the major players in this are Britain, France, Germany, Portugal, America. Put the system in place. Africa is not going to rise. And how do they do this? By the system.
Can you hear?
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, Dennis.
Okay. And by the system which they have put in place, they have put Africa down completely because it's the raw material produce of the world. Knowing that if Africa should rise, then the Western nation comes down. And they are running down Africa. Now, let me fast forward. In 2010, I read something called the lockstep scenario by the Rockefeller Foundation. The cost of that is they said in 2010 that in the year 2020, there's going to be a communist revolution in America. And what's the communist revolution? When the black people rise, they call them communists. And that's when we had the killing of, what's the name? They knelt on his neck and he died, and we saw what happened in 2020. Then in that same lockstep scenario, they wrote in the year 2023, Nigeria will go into chaos for bad government. Are you telling me they are looking into a crystal ball to predict the future? No. They know exactly what the scenario is, how they are playing it. And that's what's playing out. Then in 2 years ago, in May 2 years ago, I went to Nigeria. I was picked up by an airport taxi. I got chatting. The guy told me that one of the guys running the duty free in Abuja airport, a British guy, told him that why the guy just came, he always picks him up and now was very angry going back the very next day, that we hate ourselves so much because of the influence and the system working against us. But what he's telling the guy right now, the election coming up, they have seen the weakest person, which is the present selected person in Aso Rock, that he will definitely be the president. Then I said, God forbid, but fast forward 2 years later, where are we? He is the president. So when we focus on, we are focusing on the fruit, not the root of the issue. What is the root cause? Why are these people constantly giving, they give the same amount of loan to the Western world with zero or nothing interest rate and triple or quadruple that to Africa? It is the system. We have to really face it. We have very good leaders in our country. The corruption and the system they introduced is splitting us up. You can say, oh, we have people, why are we not doing what we want to do? Yes, that's why there must be constant conflict. Every leader that rises in Africa is cut down. But Mali sang that, how long will they stop killing our prophets? Tanzania just got one, you know? So,
all right,
okay.
Thank you. I thank you, Dennis. So, Robert, I mean, are you ready now? Quickly,
yes,
let's
I'm ready.
round up.
I'm ready. I'm ever ready. Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody in the house.
Go ahead.
It's a great opportunity to be here once again. I've been looking for this opportunity to meet with great minds like you people. I've listened to the people who are speaking, and my contribution is that I want to agree with what the two speakers have said. The problem in this crisis, this Nigerian crisis, is not just a common one that our president should just embark on a war, because, you know, in democracy, we talk about dialogue, and this dialogue, if it is not involved, now take for instance, the army, they felt there was not what was done for them, and then they came in. So there's a disagreement between the two people, both the army and the president. That was what made the army to take over. So what I expected from Tinubu is that you embark on dialogue. And now if you look at the stipulated time that was given to them, it's short, just 8 days, which means it has to come with command. And if they have not surrendered, it means they will receive a fire, which is not like that. In democracy, you have to dialogue. You know, somebody is already angry. You are coming to him with fights. He will not listen to you. You have to come in dialogue. Please listen to me. Let them listen to you and listen to them. Give them little time. I remember when it happened here. It does not just take place for once. Before Salami Abubakar hand over to government, it was for a long time, and he had to take continuously dialoguing and people's signify interest and consistently before they now Adusami Abubakar made election and hand over to President Olusegun Obasanjo. So I see this is an issue. It's actually an attack for ECOWAS, and I expected a high, a reasonable act from our leaders, the ECOWAS, especially our current president. I am not against him, but what I'm trying to say is that with the way he has started his government, he is not just doing the right thing, including the subsidy, the removal of subsidy, brought the hardship on Nigeria, and now I'm trying to bring another hardship, which is the biggest of all. Now, if the war comes now, sir, honestly, not only Nigerians, they will suffer. Look at our brothers in Sokoto, in Katsina, in Yobe, in Zamfara. Look at them. They will suffer a lot. He's not looking at it. And what I want to tell each and every one of us here is that we are looking at it. This is ECOWAS, but you know, if you go to somebody's house to fight him, he will also prepare. Nigerian soldiers are prepared. So it should not be like we are just coming because we are the giant of Africa, we are the ECOWAS then we just go and then bounce on them. People will die. And remember, these people, these soldiers will die. They have families.
Thank you very much, sir.
I appreciate every one of the two people that contributed here.
Thank you.
And the National Assembly for rejecting the war.
Let's quickly, thank you, sir. Let's quickly take Wilson. We still have only 3 hands a minute. Just keep it one minute, sir, please. So we round up.
Yeah, good evening all. Wilson and Joe. Ex-boy Nigerian Military School consultant ophthalmologist based in Switzerland. We've made a lot of remarks. I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity. I think the way going forward for many African countries is to be able to build strong institutions that would enable us to be able to apply democratic principles. We can easily see the big shamble which has happened where the current president of ECOWAS went on to take decisions where he has to retrace his steps back using the constitutional process. One would have expected that he should be able to consult with the National Assembly and follow up constitutional forms in Nigeria before coming out with such a big and powerful statement, which he has to readdress the issue now differently. We must also look at it. There is a wave going around the Sahel zone. You know, whether we like it or not, there is a contention now between the Russian forces and the Western forces. So we are looking at a shift of what has happened in Ukraine playing back itself in the Sahel zone in Africa. And as long as we don't have strong institutions that either economic or in our different countries that would address these issues where democracy is not manipulated, which is what many people fear, that democracy has a very high potency to manipulation, either through bribery or where people who are placed in power do not respect the order, the procedures which have been laid down. We've seen this happen. We've also seen this happen in military regimes, you know, that they don't respect this. We've seen how Nigeria was dragged into the Liberian War. And we look at the immediate and the remote causes of these wars. We see that the international forces play a very high role in causing this instability. And that's why Africa today would always be poor, because somebody out there is playing the smart game, wanting to take the African natural resources and give us the products back, selling them at 3 or 4 times the price. As long as we are not able to build our own stronger institutions using what we presently have, which is also a big problem in the leadership, then we always expect that any leader that comes up, the international community, directly or indirectly, always wants to manipulate to be able to fulfill their various goals. So I think going forward, we have to look at our choices. What choices do our leaders make which are unconstitutional? And if we also follow unconstitutional methods to try to reinstate something like what has happened in Niger, I think it's a big failure for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And then Mazi Okoye. Okay, Comrade David. Okay, Mazi Okoye and then Comrade David, please.
Oh, thank you, Dan. Good evening, everyone. I just want to say that it's not everything that politicians say that we should take seriously. Because from my viewpoint, I believe that our president, PBAT, or president-elect, is still in a way in campaign mode. You know, people just keep making declarations without actually thinking properly the consequences of what they are saying. How can you just say subsidy is gone and, without proper planning for that thing you're removing that is now causing so much hardship. And after that, you just plan a war under a week and then rush into a war and then start fighting a war. Is that how to, go to war? That's not how to go to war. So I wasn't really taking that threat from the ECOWAS seriously, because I know it's just strategic posturing. They just try to get the juntas, in Niger to panic and perhaps, yield back power to, Bosom. But the Nigerians are called their bluff, because they're just bluffing. Because with all the indices, there's nothing that suggests, with all the help in the world, there's no way ECOWAS would have gone to war to Niger. There's no way, whether with Western help or with whoever will help, that wouldn't have happened. Just look at Ukraine. How long did they have to wait before the West start giving them proper ammunition? They have to wait till half of their country is destroyed. Who is going to give them that help? They're just fooling themselves. These are just, jokers trying to pretend as if they are doing something. But I suppose it's a strategic way of, trying to please the West, as if they are being tough. But in a way, they know their capabilities, that they cannot do much than just tread and, all this posturing and nothing will come out of it. Because just for example, Nigeria, as it is at the moment, with the mounting debt, Nigeria just borrowed 800 million from the World Bank or IMF. Somebody that just borrowed 800 million, just 800 million is now, jostling to go to war with Niger. Where is he going to find the money to fight that war? Where is he going to find it? It's just, people just make comments and, this is just, a joke, really. So I wasn't really bothered about whether we're going to war or not, because we're never going to go to war unless Tinubu will become that man that, I read somewhere that, every time he wants to make a cup of tea, he burns his house down, not to be able to make a cup of tea.
Oh, my high station. Thank you very much. Okay, Comrade David Solomon.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Briefly, I just have a question. Number one, I think last I checked, the Republic, they are sovereign and they have the right.
I'm afraid your audio is not clear. Your audio is not clear. If you're using that device, can you remove it so that, let's see whether it will be better, please?
Is this?
Yeah,
last time I checked,
go ahead.
Niger Republic is a sovereign country. That means they have right to govern themselves the way they wish to govern themselves. That's number one. Number two, ECOWAS. And I've yet to know the benefit or the usefulness of ECOWAS to the sub-region, the West Africa sub-region. That's the question I have to ask. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Henry, you raised up your hand last time. Let's still allow you. Henry Ayola, please. That's the last question you will take. Henry Ayola, you can make a comment or question, please. Henry Ayola, are you there? All right. If you're not there, Henry, thank you very much. I don't know whether Ambassador Keshi and Mr. Jime is still minded to make comment based on what they have had. Otherwise, we are now only 2 minutes remaining for us to call it a day after 2 hours well spent. Is Ambassador Keshi and Mr. Ejime is still here? Do you wish to make any final comment? Okay.
Aspires.
Okay, Henry, are you able to make a comment now? Quickly, we have,
yes,
you have less than 1 minute.
With the situation.
Yes, thank you very much. I am careful not to repeat any of the points that have been made already. My concern is I don't know what the modalities are to get the outcome of this kind of very robust conversation, the outcome of it, to get to the government. Because I think part of the mistake this government is making, I think they have a very small kitchen cabinet that are arrogating so much knowledge to themselves, even in areas that they are obviously ignorant about, and without bringing in appropriate experts to give them very quality advice and recommendation. So I would love to know what's the plan of, the outcome of a meeting like this getting to the government, so that it will be one of the good inputs. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Ayola, our two guests are well connected. They have worked at very high level of the Nigerian Foreign Service. Mr. Jime also, for instance, regularly churn out very informative articles on the ECOWAS, African, global politics and governance. And he makes sure it's always well circulated to a lot of people in Nigeria. So I can assure you that this conversation and the outcome of it is also being published in some of our media, and it's being streamed live on YouTube. So those who should know, if they care to listen to the voice of the people, this information somehow filters across to them. And also at the end of this program, I will also circulate the YouTube link to all my contacts. That's my usual practice, more than 2,500. So they will all also get it, and most of them are also well connected to the present administration. So thank you very much for that observation. And at this point, we thank everyone who have been here with us. We started by 7 p.m. and it is now 9 p.m. 2 hours well spent. Let's see what the military junta will do. The deadline expires tonight. Informed analysis that we are getting here tonight will be that they have three options, ECOWAS. Either they extend the deadline, or they didn't say immediately it expires, we are going to launch military attack. They said, do this or you face military action. So let us see whether they will say, okay, let us delay military action a bit, let us further explore diplomatic means to resolve this problem. Or whether they will now say, okay, well, let's give you more time to listen to us, or whether they will now explore further discussion before settling finally. But from all indications, military action has very, very, very low support in Nigeria, and the government must always listen to the voice of its people before embarking on such a very, 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 very high-risk action with high consequences. Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you very much, Mr. Ejime, Ambassador Keshi, and all those who raised up their hands and made very worthwhile contribution, and all our guests who are listening, both online and on this Zoom. Thank you very much for joining. Have a very good evening.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. It was a fruitful evening.
Thank you.